Hey, welcome back to the farm. We are nearing spring. There's a lot of snow melt, which means there's a lot of mud, but it's also time to start thinking about planting and getting some shrubs and dormant trees in the ground. I am working on planning a new food forest area, and I know this is where many of you start, is with a blank slate. Maybe you have a few trees or structures you're trying to work around. It's super overwhelming, so I thought I would take you with me and show you how I'm going to plan this food forest area and get ready to plant almost 50 shrubs this spring. It's a little windy and my ducks are out calling, so bear with me with the noise. During this time of year, I know we get really eager to get our hands in the dirt, but before we can plant anything or even know what to plant, if you don't have an idea, you have to make sure you know your site or your growing space first. I've been doing a lot of permaculture certification work over the last couple of years, and so I know this plot like the back of my hand, but you may not know where to start. So I have a 5-part course on Substack, and the first class is going to teach you how to navigate your site. What I mean by that is identify wind speed and direction on average, rainfall, what your soil type is, where the sun is falling, what shadows you might have, what structures and plants are already in place. These are all things you have to know before you can start planting. Okay, so for me, I've very slowly started working on this area because behind me is my open backyard where my kids play soccer, and I still want to give them room to do that, but I'm going to start encroaching on it as they get older with some perennials, things that take a long time to grow, like trees and shrubs. So behind me, right there, I've already planted a peach. That's a dwarf. It's a small tree. It's only been there a couple years. I've got a maple. You can see the bucket on it. We've got sugar coming out of it right now. Over here, I have a Honeycrisp apple. And then this way behind me, I have an Italian plum tree. And then I've got some Josta berries that I've started filling in. Now up ground, these are my horse pastures and runs, which means that there's a lot of runoff coming from that area down the slope. We see a lot of runoff during heavy rainfall events. That's good to know because there's a lot of nutrients, specifically nitrogen, in that manure. So for me, I have to keep nitrogen-loving plants in mind. The other thing is I know that this is full sun. I know that this is clay soil. And I know that I want to do guilds around all of my plants. So let's get started with planning. Okay, so looking at this open space, through all my permaculture training, I've done a lot of site maps and mapping out. So I just went ahead while I was out here and actually just did a quick sketch. You can see I have some of the main characters laid out that I pointed out, okay? So I have my maple, I've got that peach, I have the apple I talked about next to the forsythia, and I have the plum. But because I know where I need to be able to drive my four-wheeler and walking spaces, I've marked those on my map along with my hoop house and some other walkways, or excuse me, some other structures. So being able to look at that allows me to start filling in. So I have ordered all of these plants, 47 understory crops for this particular area. And among them are serviceberry, witch hazel, mock orange, jujubes, quince, sea berries. We got apricots, persimmons, rhododendrons, hibiscus, and patriot blueberries. So knowing that about my companions that are relative to this map, I'm going to start filling that in. So I know my full sun comes from this direction. Over on this side is going to be the longest amount of sun exposure. The things that attract pollinators, flowering crops, or companions on this side. So I'm going to put a pocket of hibiscus right here. I'm going to put another pocket down here. I need this to stay open as an access point. This is the plum that's existing, the Josta berries that are existing, but this year I'll be working in guilds. So I'm going to be adding a whole bunch of companion plants around this area. I want to add a persimmon, a quince, and an apricot to this open space. So persimmon, quince, apricot. And by doing that, I'll be creating guilds around them respectively. The peach and the maple are already there. And that's how I personally approach creating a food forest situation. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you decide what plants and companions you want to insert is how those plants are going to spread over time. A lot of things like forsythia, the witch hazel that's on my list, They spread by way of sending out shoots, suckers, and or runners. And when that happens, these things are going to automatically take over space. Granted, it can take a really long time for them to do that, but it's something to think about if you don't want to really be out pruning or eradicating unwanted growth. So for me, I'm actually not going to plant my serviceberry and my witch hazel that's on my list in this particular area because I don't want it to encroach on the guilds that I'll be installing around my fruiting trees. What I'm going to do is install those as a windbreak on the opposite side of my property because they'll repopulate on their own over time, which means a thicker hedge, which is good for a windbreak. I hope this has been helpful today. We all start from nothing. I'm starting in this particular area from just a few main characters, those trees and shrubs I mentioned that are already here. And so with that in mind, know that planning is key to getting started. We want to make sure we're not replacing things, moving things later on. We want to install appropriate plants in their correct space and also make sure that we're planting things that are going to help us solve problems and solutions, that are going to enrich our soil and help enhance what's already planted, as opposed to just creating more work and more labor. I hope this has been helpful and given you some direction and maybe some inspiration on installing your own food forest. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to check out that class on Substack if you need help or some direction in gathering resource information to get started. Take care.